Hello, everyone. You are listening to the Immersive Medicine Podcast. For our first episode, we are going to be covering the topic of what is immersive medicine and digital therapeutics. I can't wait for you guys to dive into this conversation with me and the rest of our group today. So let's get started. Great. It's so great to be here with you all today. I'm Cody. This is going to be our first episode, so we'll have to do some introductions today. I'm going to be one of your co-hosts. My background is in neurologic music therapy. I'm a huge gamer, and I'm very passionate about the intersection of media, healthcare, games, and alternative medicine. So I'm going to pass it along to our co-host, Kira, or Kiki.
Hi, Kira or Kiki. A little bit about me. I am an educator with a passion for video games, arts, and production. And I'm interested in seeing kind of the same thing. I'm so curious to see the intersectionality between gaming and with medicine. I have seen the benefits within gaming and education. So to get into the medicine side, I feel like is going to be an awesome discussion.
Awesome.
And then today, I'm going to pass it on to Toby.
Hey, my friends call me Toby. But on my license as an occupational therapist, I go by Hadijat Muftal Lady Jew. I'm an occupational therapist who loves to combine video games and therapy for skill development and holistically the benefit mentally for whoever's playing them. And I love to connect people to games. I feel like I chase the dopamine. I feel like when someone says I'm not a gamer, I'm like, let's really dive into that. But I love connecting people to games that speak to them intrinsically and motivationally. So that's about me.
Cool.
Awesome. Yeah, take it away, Ryan. Go for it.
Yeah, so I'm Ryan. I'm pretty new to the games world, but I'm learning fast. 4 years in the gaming industry, 20 plus years medical device. So I'm a therapy designer and have created a wide range of medical devices, from autonomous treatment systems and robotic surgical devices for women's health. Did some home-based therapy for breast cancer survivors, neurostim work for amputees, specifically around vets and stuff like that to manage pain. And then tried to retire and saw what was going on from a mental health perspective. And we had done some mental health work too. So light therapy was a thing that I really got into and was part of putting out into the world, as well as some neurostimulation, deep brain stimulation for depression, and was on my way kind of to calling it a career. And COVID kind of got rolling in a big, bad way. And it became really clear to me that the 50-year mental health emergency we've been fighting with was a dumpster fire that was about to get a lot of napalm thrown on it. And unfortunately, I think that's what we've seen. So got really interested in what games could do as far as accessibility to care, affordability of care. How do we reach everybody and help them out from a mental health perspective? And so been doing that for 4 years now, and it has been probably my favorite and the hardest 4 years of my career, but it's been great.
Amazing. Well, it's so great to have everyone here today. And I'm so kind of excited to hear everybody's perspective. We have such a unique kind of group of people here. And I think there's some really awesome and interesting conversations that are kind of in store for us moving forward. So thank you all for taking the time to be here, and for our listeners and for me as well. And yeah, here we go. So like I said, today we're going to be really kind of going general into the topic of immersive medicine and digital therapeutics. So I guess maybe just kind of starting off with like a quick question is, what does everybody think of immersive medicine? Like, what comes to mind? How would you define it? or what is maybe your experience with immersive medicine and digital therapeutics?
So immersive medicine is the intersection between media and medicine, right? Or specifically interactive media, where it becomes immersive medicine. It is a very broad ranging concept. It could be everything from a digital therapeutic, which we'll talk about in a moment, something where you're purely talking about using media as the drug or as the medicine or as the medical device, all the way to something that could be combined with pharmaceuticals. It could be combined in a surgical aspect. It could be combined with a medical device, but it has that component of utilizing media as a therapeutic delivery mechanism, potentially a prehab, rehab sort of environment, that kind of stuff. So it's a broad container for all the ways that entertainment make us more bioavailable for our therapies.
And I would agree with everything Ryan said. And I do like highlighting the experience with the medicine and how that can, because it's so broad, and also the word experience is so broad. It's almost like there's so many multimodal like ways that you can, experience medicine. I want to highlight that because sometimes I feel like we forget about the experience and how that impacts someone long term, especially if you're thinking about carryover. And that can vary from person to person holistically.
That's a great point. That's a really good point. Kiki, do you have any thoughts or any experience with digital or digital therapeutics or immersive medicine yourself?
I'm from mainly the video game side of things, and we've taught classes on things like AR and VR, and seeing how like talking about experience, seeing how that experience changes with how interactive those technologies are, I think is that's why I'm so interested in this discussion and seeing how those experiences can be mimicked or new experiences can be had on the medicine side of things. So I love it.
If you're playing those games, I'm talking about the ones that get you very much in flow, very much connected to story, and allow you to grab agency, and have that amazing challenge condition. That thing that's not quite, it's hard, but not so hard that you don't wanna, and not so easy that you don't care. If you're living there, that you have experienced immersive medicine. I think that's going to be the biggest part of the conversation we need to have. The games are themselves very much therapeutic, at the very least as a therapeutic delivery mechanism. And I don't just mean as an inducement from the idea of, if I do this thing that's good for me, I get to do something that's fun. I'm saying the fun and the play has a portion of that therapeutic delivery or that medicine right in it. And what we're seeing is it makes you more bioavailable to the rest of the therapeutic. Not only do you want to do it, but you learn it faster, and you adopt it quicker, and it puts your body in a space where you're just literally more treatable.
Yeah, I love when you highlight that just right challenge or the flow state when someone gets into this. It's the flow state is the best way I could describe it. You're in a state of like an immense, but also like an open site of like learning. It's not too easy, so like Ryan says, that you shut it out, and it's not too challenging, so you don't shut down. It's just that it's like, when you're running or when you're doing a sport and you get into the zone, it's getting into that zone that makes it, but that's the sweet spot, right? Or you can intake information and you can have like a great impact on your life.
I love that thought. And the thing about gaming, right, is it's ubiquitous. There's 3 billion plus people doing it. When Toby talks about running and getting in the zone, some of us do. Some of us only run when we're scared. And, and some of us get outside of the zone. So some people get a runner's high when they're running. Other people get a runner's anxiety when they're running because we're set up different. But what's interesting about play, the way our brains are set up relative to play, is we all have a universal response to the play mechanism. We don't all want to play the same thing. We won't all agree on what's fun. But when we hit that fun level and then we land at that place of flow, and we know we're in flow when we've lost track of time, right? And if anybody's lost a little track of time in a video game, I mean, I don't think you've got one you love. That's exactly what it is. It's a time machine forward, right? Where you wake up 3 hours later, certain that it was 15 minutes the last time you you check the clock. I mean, you're in that space. And when you're in that space, I think what Toby's describing is it's sort of that, sometimes it's called the Tetris effect. You're there, you're aware of what's going on, but you're not really metacogniting for the most part. You're pretty much into the thing in the moment. This can happen with all sorts of media. You can get in flow with a song. I mean, I was bopping to what you got there, Cody. So that wasn't even, and you can get into flow with a movie, but interactive media, when done right, pulls you in a place that is really almost second to none. And that starts to change really everything about what's happening with you physiologically in your brain at the moment, emotionally. It changes these sorts of things. And it's super important. The weird and crazy overlap is it turns out that to do it and do it really well, there's only one group of people that have nailed this, right? And it's the folks that make video games. And I mean, it's the masters, I mean, to truly, and it's the same thing when you talk about music, Cody, and your background, right? And lots of people play music. I play guitar. I can do that sort of thing, but I don't mesmerize necessarily, right? But you go to a Pink Floyd concert, or you go see, I mean, pick anybody you want. Tripping Daisy, like go all the way over, to Polyphonic Spree. I mean, if for some people, there's just, it grabs that thread and it just takes your brain along with it, and that's usually done by people that are just really talented. And I think that's what we've seen in gaming is this massive overlap between the fact that you can get people heavily entertained and heavily in a play-based state. And it turns out we just learn best in a play-based state.
It brings me to a memory of playing we played Satisfactory for the first time a while ago, like right when COVID.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with Satisfaction in the Stones. I was like, it didn't happen at all.
No. I wish. No, but we played this game called Satisfactory, and there was something about I was playing this game with my fiance and like a friend of ours, and then I think only 2 days have passed. Up to like 3 days have passed. Sorry, no. It was actually a full week because COVID was a blur.
Wait we're losing time here.
Right there.
Losing time. That's why, because we were so fascinated. Like, we put in 40 hours during a work week. And we're like, where did the time go? Absolutely. If you ever like any kind of factory simulation games or anything like that, even the soundtrack up to the music, everything was like tailor made to keep you in this like state of just like in flow, like just going and building things. They invested so much in sound design. They invested so much in just like making the UI accessible, where you kind of got a little bit of like a hit of dopamine when you created something new, when you formed something new. It's a really cool game. If you do like that kind of stuff, it's the bee's knees. You should definitely try it.
That's a great
cool.
example.
Barnaby
I
just
like how you
in chat there, so I'm going to check that out for sure.
Oh yeah, we'll have to check it out.
Sorry,
I like how you tapped on the sound aspect, because I think that's a huge part when we're talking about these experiences and this immersion. It's including all of these different senses. It's not just that one level of experience. You're engaging your not just the visual, your auditory, you're engaging. I'm waiting for them to engage and incorporate smells. I think that would be cool.
People are thinking about it.
Yeah, there's
Keep writing me about that, man. Smell-o-vision. I'm like, I don't know.
I mean, the smells can be, there's two sides of that. Not everybody likes the same smells, yes. But there's so much of our memories even that are triggered by smells. So much of our experiences. People can smell when it's going to rain. Someone loses a jacket, and you're like, oh, I know who that is. That's this person over here. And it's like, you've never gone up and sniffed them per se, but it's like, that's how impactful.
You should have done that. That's something you should, that's not right.
I mean, I'm speaking from experience. I lost my jacket last week at a work event, and one of my coworkers literally was like, oh, I know this is yours because
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, Cody, you could, that's your world, right? Like you can speak.
Yeah, there's there's so much here that I don't know. I've been wanting to unpack a lot of things you guys are talking about, because so much you guys have been sharing in terms of flow state and immersion, and finding that right. Like I would call it almost like an arousal level of engagement for an experience is such a thing that we strive for in music therapy, and working as a clinician is trying to get somebody into that therapeutic zone, essentially, to where we can actually start working on, the key points and goals that we're working on, instead of just regulation, or instead of just getting them into a state where they can, operate or make these cognitive decisions. So a lot of that is already happening in, existing therapies that are using media, but where it's not in a digital format, right? It's this individual person to person experience. And so I think there's so much potential, like we're talking about with digital therapeutics, to then reach in terms of accessibility and be able to impact people who, don't have time to get into a one-on-one session with a therapist, but they can still receive that therapeutic experience on their own, through a device, through some guided, training. I think there's a lot of, amazing potential there. But another really cool thing, what Kiki was saying about smells, is like smell. Smell is like the only sense that is primal, that doesn't go through the thalamus and is like directly related to the brain. And so it doesn't go through, the gateway essentially of what is the smell. It's a primal sense that is directly tied to our brain. So it's such a great, I think you're saying, like, there's so much potential there for us to tap into these like sensory immersive experiences to then take the immersion to a whole nother level.
So, fun fact, because I do dabble a little bit in the VR like social community. There was a furry convention that got, I think it was this year. I'm looking on the.
Hold on, what was that? 5 minutes until we went into devolving.
No. I just want to talk about this because it was the largest VR furry convention to date. It was 21,000 people attended. Wow. 4 days. They raised over $46,000. And that's substantial. They in the package of the 2022, they had scent sprays that they sent to people. And I remember thinking it was like super wild, and I didn't attend, but my friends were telling me about it. I guess it smelled like there's like cedar wood, like it's supposed to be like earthy and everything. Mm-hmm. But people bought these things to go along with their VR experience, because the convention wasn't like you in VR, wasn't like you went into a convention center. You were like in this like forest, like world, like center where you got to experience music and meet other people, and there's a lot of really cool things and interviews online about it. But it was really cool that the community wanted the smell as part of their immersive experience. And I just want to highlight that. It just reminded me of like smell vision and like, is anyone doing it? I'm like, here are these people in this community. They're just like, yeah, no, let's fully get immersed. Here's a bottle. You can spray me around while you're in this VR convention and everything like that. And speaking just like with VR too, there's in the VR chat community, there has been nonprofits that have been made through community in VR, like especially with the Trans Academy for people who are, who are trans. They developed their own nonprofit, and through that, they've also like hosted like vocal coaches and lessons and everything like that, as well as helping hands. They created their own ASL language using only the 6 or 7 gestures you get with your hands.
That is something else. Wow.
There is some powerful thing when it comes to like immersive experiences, especially I think we're just touching the bases with VR experiences, because like VR chat is like a reflection of the internet. It needs moderation, but I will say that
what are some of those words they came up with, Toby? What do you
people have like made such beautiful things when they're allowed to create and explore, and it's been inherently therapeutic for them. A lot of people have made whole worlds to look back on like past experiences that they are processing and that they go through. Some people that I know have done their VR sessions, their VR therapy sessions in VR, because they're wearing avatars that they feel comfortable in, that reflects how they feel inside.
There's great data on that. I mean, that there's research that shows the ability to set yourself up to be who you feel you are, who you are. That is a very therapeutic situation for you. And to go out in the world, and then, I mean, that's kind of step one, and we'll call that the dopaminergic state. I got to be me the way I want to be. And then the serotonergic response to that is to move into a community where people accept you, and better than accept you. Who wants to be accepted? You want to be like, celebrated. Celebrate you for what you are in that environment, what you bring to it, right? And that's, I think it's super magical. And that's something that in generally, and we're talking about community, These are super important things. I love Toby going, I dabble in community and VR. And then she's at the furry convention.
I did not attend, but I know many
how
people
many
did.
thousand attendees?
Yeah.
21,000, I think. I saw it. But I attend EDM concerts and a lot of DJ sessions in VR chat. Japan in VR chat they love old school hip hop, and they appreciate it to the point it's like, wow, did you guys learn from like the greats? Where did you guys get this? And it's like this old soul, like neo soul like stuff, as well as like I was amazed, but like I was in a room where a lot of people didn't speak the same language I did, but we were all like having an immersive like music experience. I love that stuff.
Cool. I mean, I think again, we're hitting all these places. I think the big theme that you're going to keep seeing that pulls us back, guys, is this idea of connection. So the Surgeon General came out this week. Did you see the new Surgeon General's warning
about parenting? Oh
yeah,
my God.
For health to be a parent. Now that's not news. I don't know who has kids. It's not new news, but it is something. When they dug into it, what they're looking at right now is in the United States, 65% of parents feel isolated, lonely, and stressed out.
Wow.
Those are big words. Lonely is a huge word, right? I mean, we already weren't all that great at huddling up and being the tribe that we needed to be in any given moment. And COVID comes in and teaches us to fear each other, stay away from each other. And also get a little bit like, that's yours, this is mine. We couldn't even like stop ourselves from hoarding toilet paper and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Neighbor, the new version of Can You Spare a Square? And like, yeah, exactly. So we weren't our best selves in that moment. And now we're coming out of that, in a very different place. And folks need that level of community. And they, there's something that's actually one of the most noted ways in which somebody will feel secure is the idea that there is a community and a support network, whether they access it or not, knowing that they feel they've got that community and that access. There's a whole bunch of reasons why we don't, right? We've been disconnected from one another. In some places, we literally fear one another. We don't, and then we've retracted. We're socially not particularly capable always of finding that and that place that we can hang out, we can fit. And these online communities, the ones done right, the one I'm not talking about free and unmoderated chat where it's just let it all go. But the kind of places where there are rules and the people that show up are there to rise each other up. These are amazing ways to get reconnected.
Yeah.
And so I think that, we're going to keep drawing back and end up realizing loneliness and this lack of community and really what gaming, what media can do in that world is vital right now. I mean, it would be great if we could all meet in person all the time, but it's not a reality of the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason we're all, doing this virtually and not sitting in a room chatting about this. It's just, you have to use, the technology that's available, and we're living in a global digital space now. So that's huge. And I completely agree. I mean, when I moved to Toronto a few years ago, like literally during the middle of COVID pandemic, I was locked in a room for 2 weeks, couldn't talk to anybody, didn't know anyone in this new country. And really did rely on, the online communities that I had established to not, feel lonely and isolated. So, I mean, I can speak firsthand to just the power of, online communities and having friends and, the power therapeutically of just video games and the people that you can play with through them and the potential there. So, no, I think that's such an amazing point to bring up, Ryan.
Yeah. I think social contracts are super, super important for having a beneficial experience from a community. Mm-hmm. Everyone agreeing that we're going to be treating people kindly and that being reinforced at the beginning. I know, like, that's why I look like when I'm on gaming discords, I'm like, I sit and observe. Yeah. And if a lot of things are sliding, I'm like, well, nope, not safe here. And I go to another Discord. But sorry, Kira, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. Especially, I like that you brought up Discord because I'm kind of in the same boat. It's like you don't know how that space is moderated. You don't know if it's going to be moderated. When we're talking about online communities, especially around that COVID time, what kept going through my head was Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing came out literally just as the pandemic, like lockdown was happening. And the amount of people that went to Animal Crossing, whether you had played it before whether you were like me and you played it back in the day, and you're like, okay, I want to go without Mr. Rossetti yelling at me when I fell asleep without saving my island.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like a lot of people went to Animal Crossing because it allowed you to go to, you could be isolated on your island. You could share your code and have people come over. You could really decide who you want to interact with. And you could go around the island. You could do different things. There were different events, like global events happening. So even though you might not have friends that you knew to play that game with, you could still participate in these global events. And there were so many. I'm part of like 3 or 4 different discords specifically for Animal Crossing. Like so I think that was huge with allowing people to still share and feel that sense of community, even though everyone was like, you can't leave your house.
That game, that game is amazing, right? Like, so yeah. The data on it, what they've got 30 years of longitudinal data now on people who play that game, and they're just happier people. If you lived in that community for a period of time long enough to understand the things you just said about the game, if you've been there, you're going to be higher percentage likelihood happy, higher percentage more of the time, that's just crazy if you think about that. There's not much we can say about that other than being part of a good family or having these certain specific interactions, having a really close best friend, having a strong partner. I mean, and then Animal Crossing, so you can get married, or you can have Animal Crossing, or you can get married in Animal Crossing, and they all seem to work out pretty well. And it really starts to point out that combination of gameplay. And that, I mean, there's a social contract in Animal Crossing. There's a certain way you behave. There's a certain code of conduct that just has people more comfortable and feeling safer. And then and it's that bridge too. If you're awkward, not sure what you want to say next or how you want to contact somebody, you want a friend, but you're not quite sure how to get there. Something like Animal Crossing gives you something to have that first conversation about. We're going to do this together or that together, and it's got a ton of safety element too, where you can kind of wade your way in. So I mean, there's probably 10 games that I'm not sure which one wins, but it's in a top 10 of, I think, the most medicinal media that's out there. It's Animal Crossing for sure.
Yeah. For me, I feel like your animal. And I never actually got into Animal Crossing. I was like one of the few people who wasn't playing it. I played Sky, Children of Light. They're from the same makers of like Journey. And it's sort of like the same kind of social contract of like you help new players. So new players, they were called moths because they had brown capes. And it was this thing where you go through the storyline. I don't want to spoil it, but it's about like just life and death. But it's beautifully told, and you're little sky children of light who are navigating these things. And sometimes you have to hold hands with other sky children, and you have to fly and do all these things. But there's this thing about the community where if you saw someone in a brown cape, you were like, you wanted to help them because they would say, "Oh, I helped the little moth today." It made people feel really good. And the community did a really good job just highlighting like, "Oh, I helped the little moth today get past this level." And in the Discord, it was all about they started calling them Ubers. So if you needed help and you couldn't fly to a certain place, you would go and ask for, "Can I get an Uber to?"
So funny.
Oh my gosh.
And
I want to play that now.
It was a really awesome experience because you can't really chat with anyone unless you accepted their friend invite, but you can emote and you can make sounds.
Super important dynamic there. Or a game mechanic, right? Or a communication mechanic, right? You're not going to just talk at me. You have to have my permission. Think about that culturally, Toby. Like expand about that a little bit more if you think about it. A lot of games you actually don't want to identify a noob because they're going to get piled on like there's no more.
Yes.
Change myself as quickly as possible, look like I know what I'm doing. And then they built a culture where it's completely the opposite. It's probably the safest thing you can do is be someone who looks new from what I can hear in this game, right? Like
some people would go back and wear their brown capes because they just like that, like
having people work with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I love that. There's a game called Palia.
Palia. I'm playing that. Yeah.
I was late into Palia, but Palia was a very similar feeling to me. I don't there was no like, oh, this is the uniform you wear when you just start, but it was so weird. I mean, I play a lot of Overwatch, and I
It's a
can go
little
on and
different
on
from
about
Overwatch there.
toxicity in communities. So
yeah, started with League, went to Overwatch, and I was like,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So coming in late to Palia and still being like you could tell everybody knew what they were doing. And if people can sense that you don't know what you're doing, or like there is a chat, you can ask in the chat. There was so much I was learning just because it was like some random person saw my thing and was like, hey, come meet me at these coordinates and I'll show you what's up. And I'm like, sure. I was learning how to cook. I ended up in some like
Did you make birthday cakes?
Yeah, they had this
cake parties.
They had this right. Someone said cake party in the chat, and I was like, I don't know what a cake party is. Like, what do you do? And they're like, just come over here. So they're like, can you do this? Can you do that? They had me. I think my job was literally just taking the buns, like the layers out, because I couldn't do anything else. So there was like a procession line, and it was like, okay, somebody has to do this, and then you do that, and you had to do it in a certain time.
Now you're into cooperative gameplay,
There
and
you go.
you're invited to participate, and you matter. So rolling this back to Cody, what you said, how now that we've just talked about all this, right? A couple therapists in the room, how can this not be part of immersive medicine?
Mm-hmm.
And notice we're talking about things, they weren't designed as digital therapeutics. They weren't designed as serious games. They weren't designed as anything other than something that would interact in a way with a strong social contract, a good play element, and a lot of community and belonging, right? And it turns out that's what medicine is in digital therapeutics, right? That is a big part of it. We're going to get into all sorts of good stuff over time about, why exergame matters, why movement matters, all these sorts of things will come up. But this community, this belonging, this is not just fun. This is very, very good for you. And it is very much intrinsically how we're wired. And it's also doesn't run contrary to it. I mean, if you think about, we want this in real life. We want this kind of acceptance. We want to play in its entirety like this. But for the most part, when you try to step into an environment and make that happen, it's really, really hard. I mean, it's just sort of an entropy sort of situation. When you first put humans together in a room, it sort of kind of goes Lord of the Flies for whatever reason. That's where you start. And so, but
as
then you
feels
think
each other out.
Yeah, or takes from one another, or there becomes a hierarchy very quickly. I mean, we're sort of built to do all that kind of stuff. But interestingly, and this could be part of the human condition, it's not what most of us want. In fact, as we see more and more, we're talking about like what is neurodiversity, what it is to be neurodivergent, and the rest of it. I think it's going to land one day that normal is the 1% to 2% that has been able to take that top of the pyramid and tell us all what normal is. And a lot of the sadness that's running through the rest of us is it's discordant between what we feel we want and what we have to do to live in that pyramid environment. Right? I think, there's all sorts of things that makes neurodiversity. I'm not taking away from someone that's, is barely verbal and on the spectrum and what it means to go through that. But a lot of us are quite different, really, and we don't have a lot of places where it's okay to be different.
Yeah, a lot of structures and systems are not built for our minds.
And I think our minds, that's the point. Who's our? Because I think it might be most of us. Right?
Well, I identify as neurodivergent.
And what does norm mean? What does normal mean if not just like what someone is presuming as an average?
Yeah.
Well, Kiki, for me, what normal meant when I was little is pain. Right? Like over and over and over, pain. I just couldn't.
Okay.
I couldn't be the things that normal was supposed to be. So normal meant scary. Normal meant masking. Normal meant hard and confusing and all that kind of stuff. And that's the point is I think that there is, if you look at these hierarchical structures that are running around us, all the way from the time that there was an idea there's a king, or there's a very orange man running around, all of which people think are anointed by God. And you're like, okay, why am I not anointed by God? How did you get on the pyramid? Right?
I can relate.
It gets a little uncomfortable pretty fast that you don't belong at the top. And so these flattened environments, and sorry, Toby, I'll get out of your way here in a second, but these flattened environments, like the one you're talking about here, it's like, hey, we're glad you're here. We're glad that you're part of what we're doing. Let's make a cake. You're like, I mean, think about it really. It's a virtual cake. You're never going to taste it. But what is it? So where's the intrinsic value? It's the belonging. It's the connection. It's the flatness. There was no pyramid that day. If anything, you might have been celebrated for being new, and that was kind of fun. That stops happening after like kindergarten. It was cool to be the new kid. Grade 1, maybe. By grade 2 or 3, you're standing up in front of the classroom. Things weren't comfortable anymore. And, after a while, that pyramid had been established and you had to come in and fight your way up to the top. And or not make it, right? And the closer you could get to normie behavior, at least when I was trying to chase that pyramid, the higher you could get. So that was, I think the flattening of all this is then, and this idea of accepting that what's normal is to not be normal. And then we start to get into a really different environment. And some of these cultures, it happens in companies. Trust me, in Deepwell, nobody's normal. There is not one thing normal about Deepwell, which is what makes it fabulous, right? And but there's other places you go to work, and it's where like innovation and creativity goes to die, and it's got that sort of that very, very operational feel and low levels of creativity, tons usually of organization, and a lot of these pyramid looking things. Sorry, Toby, I jumped over you there.
It's okay. I just wanted to speak about my experience with normal. My experience with normal, I think, was more centered in like confusion and sadness. And it's because I felt like, and I think it's really sad but cool that I could see it also in other children when I worked with children in pediatrics. They would come and be like, why is this so hard for me? Like, why is it so easy for everyone? And it wasn't because they weren't putting like work into it, and sometimes they had to put more work.
The harder you work, the farther you get away from where normal is. The weirder it gets, right? So you're trying harder. I think that I experienced that to the point, Toby, that I started so I was a neurodivergent before they could diagnose it. So I went to school in a time, I was born in 1972, right? So I'm way old compared to you guys. And, they didn't know what that was. So they thought it was deviance, right? And after a while, it got easier to be accepted. As a deviant, I could accept the fact that people didn't like me. I'm the bad guy. And the bad guy isn't liked by people. Because really what I was is this guy desperately trying to be liked. And while trying really hard to be liked, not being liked, it's way easier to accept, oh, no, I'm not going to try. I'll be the thing they say I am. Because if you're trying so hard to please, and as a net result of that, you're actually getting farther and farther away from your net goal, that's exactly the kind of conversation that you guys are talking about. I got like 5 minutes just popped up. I got to go see Ed Freeze, which I'm very excited about. He's
no problem. Yeah, no, this has been a really great conversation.
You should describe what a digital therapeutic is.
Sorry. Really quick, Kiki, could you relate to having a student that you felt like they were neurodivergent and they were asking the questions, those big questions like why is it so hard, and you had to be like, oh baby, you just think differently.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard sometimes because you can't just certain words, like they don't even know how to articulate it or put those things in words yet. So it's like trying to level with them and work with them and try and make things as palatable as I can as an educator. That's all I really try and do in those situations. A lot of my work is with empowering women and amplifying women's voices. So a lot of my work deals with that intersectionality of being a woman, being a Black woman. So not to compare that to being neurodivergent as well, but being able to see those kind of, I don't even know how to put it in the right word now, but yeah, just being able to be empathetic and being able to understand that not everybody starts off with the same resources or with the same tool set, I think is super impactful. So yeah, it definitely comes up, but it's always no instances is going to be the same, right?
Yeah,
it's really notable what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I think being female and being neurodivergent are almost the same things in many cases. Like it's harder that top of the pyramid isn't necessarily available to you right off the get go. So if you're female and neurodivergent, well, hang on, Toby, what a ride that's going to be, right? You start stacking. I do want to do this thing super quickly though, because this is a really important question that Cody asked, and I'm going to read you guys because it's really important for what's going on right now in digital therapeutics. Digital therapeutics, these are defined, right? They are evidence-based therapeutic interventions driven by software to prevent, manage, or treat medical disorders or disease. That's an important stop point because you require FDA clearance to do something that treats, prevents, or manages disease.
Mm-hmm.
We got a lot of folks running around right now going, I got a digital therapeutic. I'm a digital therapeutic. You're not. Most likely they're not. I mean, again, we talked about 350,000 wellness apps out in the world at the moment, right? 90,000 of them created during the health emergency order where they allowed you to make those kind of statements, but those statements aren't allowed anymore since November 6th, 2023. Since then, if you're going to call yourself a digital therapeutic, you need to be cleared as a medical device. That's a class 2 medical device or higher. That is not like, building a Band-Aid. This is a real process.
Thing. Yeah.
And so there's only 20 of those cleared right now.
Wow.
Only 5 of them are for mental health. So I think it's really important. And I'm not saying the wellness apps don't help. I'm not saying, and the games don't necessarily help, but one of the important things is to start differentiating. Some of these things are really good for you. Some of them, all of them. Media is very, very powerful. So if we don't sort this stuff out, you can end up landing in a place that doesn't make a lot of sense. And unfortunately, the agency hasn't been able to go fast enough to clear enough of them that we get the ubiquity of media. So there's like what you guys are talking about games. You're like, this one draws me in and this one draws me in. And that provides you, the space into a therapeutic place. The digital therapeutics, for a lot of reasons, aren't cleared, not the least of which is that they got flooded. The FDA got flooded with this post-pandemic, like everybody else. They're just trying to catch up.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, this happened to us in light therapy a long time ago too. They're just our pretenders. What I love about these games is they're not pretending anything. They didn't tell you they're a digital therapeutic. They just are one. And so a big part of the conversation we're having is how do we normalize that, draw it into the stream so people can identify the difference between the media that can be amazingly good for you and some of the stuff that is amazingly bad for you, because there is that range of power in this media.
Yeah, let the media speak for itself, or let the product speak for itself. You shouldn't have to tell somebody what it does. The results should be right there. You should be feeling it. So yeah.
And a lot of the examples we talked about today are, things that weren't intended to be therapeutic digital or therapeutic devices that, have those outcomes. And hopefully, as we're more aware of these things, we can really start to define what creates those therapeutic principles and how we can start implementing those intentionally to maximize those results.
Absolutely. And how you create harm. This is an important conversation. A lot of these folks that are making these apps are like, well, what harm am I doing? Well, delay of care is one of the harms you're doing, right? So if somebody says to themselves, I'm feeling mentally a certain way, I think I need help, and they download a thing, and it turns out that thing isn't what it says it is, highest likelihood if you're really depressed is that you're going to equate that failure to yourself instead of to the product, and they just get farther away from being treatable, go from mild to moderate symptoms. When we talk about suicidality, people make these transitions in moments. In moments, they can make a leap. And so you really are in a critical place at that moment. And I think that as much as the agency hasn't caught up, we're going to need that bright line that says, you're a digital therapeutic, you're not. And then on top of it, we got to find a way to get things like Animal Crossing over that line because it's doing exactly everything we need, right?
Yeah.
And it's doing it all the right ways for all the right reasons. And I think that's super important.
Definitely. And I think we'll definitely have more conversations that'll go a little more in depth into maybe how we can make those changes. Not just us, but, as an industry and moving forward of, really trying to bring those things over the line, like you're saying. I am mindful of time, and Ryan, I know you need to.
I am a minute late, so I'm gonna bug out on you guys here, but I really enjoyed it. Thank you guys for getting this all rolling.
Of course. The first of many, hopefully.
Yeah, nice. It's got to be the first of many. Can't just do one of anything.
Of course.
All right.
Awesome. Well, great to have you. Thanks, Ryan. Awesome. Well, thank you guys, everyone else who's joined us today. Kiki, it's been great to host this with you. Toby, wonderful as always to have your insights as well. Before we close up for the day, I just want to let our listeners know that you can, find us kind of all over. We have a website that you can check out called immersivemedicine.org. So you can find us there. That's where you can find some resources that Ryan and some other contributors have brought together, really focused on immersive medicine, digital therapeutics, everything like that. If you're curious to learn more, You can see that here. It's fantastic. So please check that out. You can also find us on LinkedIn at the Immersive Medicine Network. And you can, nice. And that's us, the Immersive Medicine Podcast Studio. That is us today. And if you want to reach out to us, please do, because we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have you guys involved in the conversation, either in the LinkedIn group or send us some submissions on our website. Does anyone else have anything they want to say before we close out for the day? This has been a super awesome first episode, everyone.
Thanks everybody else. But thank you, Cody, as well.
Oh yeah, thank you, Cody.
My pleasure, guys. My pleasure.
And all the important people behind the scenes making it happen.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Amazing. Well, thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. And we'll catch you on the next episode. Have a great one. And thanks for listening to the Immersive Medicine Podcast.